Tommy Wiseau's The Room is a huge phenomenon. People love it, there's midnight screenings of it, there's t-shirts, there's a book about it written by one of the stars, there's a movie being made out of that book starring James Franco. But in all this attention that's been paid to it, all the cult acclaim it's received, the questions remain: what is going on in this movie? What is it actually about? What makes it great or terrible or whatever it is? I think there's this really big temptation with The Room to look at Tommy Wiseau's face, to look at the nonsensical plot and the terrible acting, and lump it in with Plan 9 from Outer Space and Birdemic, to call it a so bad it's good movie and leave it at that. And I don't disagree with that sentiment exactly. I mean, it is a so bad it's good movie. It definitely is that. But the more I've looked at it, the more I think that this label doesn't do justice to all the things going on here. So, in this video, I'm going to do a deep dive into The Room. Not to figure out if the movie is great or awful, or to even address quality at all, but to simply ask and hopefully answer, what's with this movie? What I'm going to do to start looking at The Room is to take you through what you could consider the film's main tendency, and that's the desire to create a feeling of realism. I know that's kind of a surprising thing to say considering just how weird the movie is, but really part of what makes the movie so weird is its strange loyalty to showing us life as it really happens. You can see this tendency throughout the movie, the instinct to prize what feels normal, everyday, slice of life. The desire to make you feel like you're not just watching a movie, you're watching the real lives of real people as their lives and secrets unfold. So let's look at the first scene, because it really starts off the movie with a sense of strained realism.
I have something for you.
What is it?
Just a little something.
Johnny, it's beautiful. Thank you. Can I try it on now?
Sure, it's yours.
You wait right here. I'm gonna try it on right now.
In this opening bit of dialogue, we can see how Wiseau uses repetition to try to make the characters feel more alive, more organic. Most films are written with efficiency in mind. Characters traditionally aren't supposed to say lines unless those lines further the action or develop character. But Wiseau boldly goes against that tradition, choosing to have Lisa repeat the sentiment that she should try on the dress.
Can I try it on now? I'm gonna try it on right now.
By including this repetition, Wiseau is trying to make Lisa feel like a person, a human who sometimes needs to repeat things, who doesn't just say everything to move action forward. What's amazing is that this repetition is doubled later in the scene.
Isn't it fabulous?
I would do anything for my girl.
Oh, hey guys. Wow, look at you.
It's from Johnny.
Anything for my princess.
Here, in a kind of weird way, Johnny is posed as a realistic character who repeats things like a real person would. Not everything he says is original or necessary. Sometimes he just sort of says things, seemingly because they're just stuck in his brain.
I would do anything for my girl.
Anything for my princess.
Wiseau's use of unnecessary information and dialogue that he uses to reinforce a sense of realism comes through in a number of scenes. Let's look at one of the most mundane scenes in the film, Johnny and his friend Mark ordering at a coffee place.
Great, sure. I'm gonna get a slice of cheesecake and a bottle of water. I'll have a large peanut butter cup with extra whipped cream, please.
All right. And I'll take some cheesecake and a coffee.
Okay, once you guys have a seat, we'll have
A common adage of screenwriters and directors is start late, finish early. And if Wiseau were following that advice, he would start the scene from the point where Mark starts talking about how he's tired of playing games with women.
I'm so tired of girls' games.
What happened now, Mark?
Instead of choosing to start the scene here, or at least with Johnny and Mark ordering, Wiseau has not one, but two couples order before he and Mark do. For that matter, the director has this weird cheesecake subplot going on here, where one member of each preceding couple orders the cheesecake.
I'm gonna get a slice of cheesecake and a bottle of water.
And I'll take some cheesecake and a coffee.
And then the waitress urges Johnny to try the cheesecake.
How about something like cheesecake?
No.
It's real good.
By including these couples, and by including the detail of the cheesecake, Wiseau creates the feeling that the world pre-exists Johnny's appearance in it. This waitress was already selling acclaimed cheesecake. People were already buying it. And Johnny and his friend are just one part of that bigger picture. Another more extreme example of the world being rendered as a real place that Johnny is not the center of occurs with a series of scenes between Mike and Michelle. These two characters, friends of Johnny and Lisa, are almost entirely unrelated to the plot of The Room. The scene where they're introduced has literally nothing to do with anything.
Let's have some fun.
Hello?
I forgot my book.
What's this?
What's so interesting about it, though, is that Wiseau isn't happy just having one unnecessary scene with mostly unnecessary characters. He insists on having an unnecessary scene discussing this unnecessary scene that concerns unnecessary characters. Later on in the film, when Mike is talking to Johnny, he retells the narrative of him getting caught with his girlfriend.
We're going at it, and I get out of there as fast as possible. You know, I get my pants, I get my shirt, and I get out of there. And then about halfway down the stairs, I realize that I have misplaced. I've forgotten something. My underwear. So I come back to get it, you know, and I pretend that I need a book. You know, I'm like looking for my book, and then I reach in, put the underwear in my pocket, and sort of slide out real quick. Well, Claudette, she saw it sticking out of my pocket. So she pulls it out, and she's showing everybody me underwears.
I like this series of scenes a lot because they highlight how far Wiseau is willing to go to make the world of The Room seem larger than Johnny and Lisa's failing relationship. As an audience, we're forced to consider the possibility that The Room isn't only about the main conflict, but about a weird world of interlocking relationships wherein any information is not only worth showing, but also sometimes worth retelling. Unlike the Mike and Michelle scenes, in which pointless minutiae is shown and then later inexplicably talked about, there's this scene where something huge and insane happens, and then it's just never spoken about again.
Where's my money?
Where's my fucking money, Denny?
Denny, look at me in the eyes and tell me the truth. We're your friends.
I bought some drugs off of him.
Although this drug scene feels completely different from the Mike and Michelle me underwears situation, it strengthens Wiseau's attempt to make the movie seem more naturalistic. Here's Denny, a character who's already secondary to the main action of the film. Suddenly he's given a subplot that not only generates dire conflict, but also suggests that Denny has a turbulent history. When Wiseau was asked why this scene with Denny was included, he said,
well, because this is, again, you know, if we do an entire movie about Danny, let's assume that for 1 minute, what will happen? You will not ask this question. Now you say, what happened to Danny? What's happened there? And that's the idea behind it.
This weird and rambling quote really gets at how far Wiseau is willing to go to make characters in his movie feel somehow real, like they have a history. Like, Denny is mixed up with drugs, but it's not because it's related to some greater plot structure. It's just because that's sort of what Denny's going through right now, and he wants to tell you about it. Another aspect of this scene that shows a loyalty to realism is that it concerns drugs, a systemic problem that exists in the background of the whole film and can be used to explain a lot of what characters do wrong. Drugs are everywhere in this movie. Toward the beginning of the film, Lisa manipulates Johnny into drinking this disgusting vodka scotch slurry. Johnny's drinking is seen as a failing of his character, as made evident by this conversation between Lisa and her mother.
Well, at least you have a good man.
You're wrong. Mom, he's not what you think he is. He didn't get his promotion, and he got drunk last night. And he hit me.
Johnny doesn't drink.
In this scene, Johnny's drinking, rather than his ostensible hitting of his future wife, is viewed as the true sin. His failure to maintain sobriety is posed as the ultimate cause of their domestic conflict. This demonization of drugs occurs with Mark later on. When he sits on the roof smoking weed, Peter, the psychologist, criticizes him for using drugs.
Why are you smoking that crap? I mean, it's no wonder you can think straight. It's gonna screw with your head.
In this same scene, Mark briefly holds Peter over the edge of a building.
What are you, nuts? Gah!
This violent scene can be seen as the direct result of weed smoking. Whereas Peter finds Mark smoking unacceptable, he gets over the attempted murder at record speeds.
Sorry, man, you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Let's just talk about your problem.
This is the same as the Claudette scene I just showed where Johnny's drinking is the problem, not his supposed beating. The social illness of drug addiction is the issue, not the resulting actions. So, we come back to this Denny scene. The problem here clearly isn't just that Denny got in over his head. It's not even that he did something illegal and life-threatening. It's that he specifically got into drugs. This is highlighted from Claudette's reaction.
I don't have them anymore. It doesn't matter. How in the hell did you get involved with drugs? What, were you giving them to him, selling them to him? Where in the hell did you meet that man?
What kind of drugs do you take?
So, yeah. By posing problems in the movie as highly related to drugs, and by placing weight on the drugs over the acts that those drugs cause, Wiseau ties conflict in the movie to greater social problems. He makes it clear that his priority isn't only the unfolding of plot or the development of character, but the world that surrounds the room, a world that exists and operates outside the scope of the narrative. Now that I've looked at the room's realistic tendencies, it's important to start talking about how these tendencies are underscored by other, incredibly weird, uncanny, unnatural choices that Wiseau makes. Let's look at a scene toward the beginning of the movie, the flower shop scene.
Hi.
Can I help you?
Yeah, can I have a dozen red roses, please?
Oh, hi, Johnny. I didn't know it was you. Here you go.
That's me. How much is it?
It'll be $18.
Here you go. Keep the change. Hi, doggy.
You're my favorite customer.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Now, according to everything I just said about realism and the room, this scene should work with Wiseau's desire to make the film world seem realistic and decentered from Johnny. The scene is completely unnecessary. If it hadn't existed, no other aspect of the room would change in the least. It has no purpose in the movie, and as such, it can be seen as part of Wiseau's desire to make his film seem more organic. But really look at this scene. So many things are off about it. If you watch closely, the pace of the scene seems to rapidly accelerate as it progresses. It starts with Johnny taking his time parking his car and walking to the front of the store, and the first few lines don't seem to be taking an especially short time, but toward the end, the characters seem almost desperate for the scene to end. Johnny even says, "Keep the change," in a clear attempt to cut the scene as fast as possible.
How much is it?
It'll be $18.
Here you go. Keep the change.
Moreover, the lines in the scene just feel out of place and downright strange. For instance, the cashier's line,
Oh, hi, Johnny. I didn't know it was you.
makes no sense. Do Johnny's trademark sunglasses really mask this man's almost absurdly distinctive face? The face of her favorite customer? These elements completely clash with the slice-of-life, mundane world Wiseau seems to be trying to construct. So, in the first part of this video, I mentioned how repetition of lines in the first scene creates the impression that characters in the room are speaking in a natural, realistic way. We have the opening scene where Lisa says she'll try on the dress right now, and we have the coffee shop scene in which multiple customers give a similar order. But the extent to which Wiseau repeats things in the film goes way beyond the realistic and enters a world of weirdness, almost creepiness. For one, the characters repeat themselves constantly. Each character has a few trademark catchphrases that they use and reuse in the film, and these catchphrases don't work in the same way that sitcom catchphrases do, where the character says the line sometimes as a punchline to a running joke. Instead, Wiseau uses catchphrases in a way that's entirely unique to filmmaking. There's Johnny's "oh hi," which he uses every time another character enters the room.
Oh, hi, Danny. Oh, hi, Mike. What's new? Oh, hi, Claudette. Oh. Bye.
There's Lisa's "you owe me one," which she uses to get the other characters to do what she wants.
You owe me one anyway. You owe me one.
There's Johnny's "let's go home" that he uses repeatedly at the end of scenes.
Let's go home. Let's go home.
Let's go home, Danny.
In these cases, the characters' often repeated catchphrases seem to serve as a dialogue writing shortcut, a tool by which characters have a preset way of starting, continuing, or ending a scene that doesn't require the introduction of a new line. By using catchphrases, Wiseau makes his characters seem almost robotic, and he thereby undercuts any feeling of naturalism that he's trying to accomplish in other aspects of the film. If an audience member can watch a scene, see a character walk in, and know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Johnny is going to say,
"Oh, hi, Danny,"
then it doesn't feel like real life where people sometimes repeat themselves. It kind of feels like a nightmare. The distorting, nightmarish impact of these catchphrases doesn't stop here, though, because Wiseau not only has his characters repeat their own catchphrases over and over again, he has them repeat catchphrases that are just generally used by many of the characters in the film. For instance, characters say some variation of "I have to go" over and over in the film.
I have to go now.
I have to go home.
I have to go now. I'll see you later, darling.
They say it even if this isn't appropriate to the scene at all. In this scene...
Johnny?
Did you get a new dress?
Well, I guess I better be going.
Johnny literally asks Michelle a question, "Is that a new dress?" And she responds with this same catchphrase, a variation on "I gotta go." Another example of these generally repeated catchphrases is "I don't want to talk about it," which characters in the film say at various points, sometimes even though they brought up the issue that they don't want to talk about.
I had sex with someone else.
You can't be serious.
You don't understand.
Who? Who is it?
I don't want to talk about it.
You don't want to talk about it. Then why did you bring it up in the first place?
Wiseau presumably has his characters say this to avoid them repeating themselves or saying dialogue he doesn't want to include. That is to say, the characters don't want to talk about it when Wiseau doesn't want them to talk about it. By having his characters share a set of innocuous catchphrases, Wiseau makes it obvious that his characters were all written by the same person, that they have no real identity beyond their existence in Wiseau's imagination. These verbal tics go completely against a sense of naturalism. They insist that the world of the room is an invention, a place where characters speak in order to continue the action, a place wherein realism is secondary to furthering the plot. In a wider context, the movie seems to revolve around a few scenes that repeat themselves over and over again. For example, a scene where Lisa and her mother Claudette speak on Lisa's relationship to Johnny is repeated 4 times in the movie. These Claudette-Lisa scenes aren't precise replicas of each other, but each one insists on repeating the same set of information. Lisa doesn't love Johnny, Claudette wants Lisa to stay with him, etc.
I don't love him anymore.
Please, don't hurt Johnny.
I don't love Johnny anymore. I don't even like him.
It's not right, Lisa. I still think you should marry Johnny.
In a lot of ways, the repetition of this scene is similar to the number of catchphrases. Wiseau seems to be wanting to construct real drama here. He wants to show us the slice-of-life conflict Lisa is going through. But rather than including new scenes to show the audience this conflict, he uses a shortcut, recycles the same scene over and over. This causes the characters to have an extremely limited number of ways of interacting with each other. For instance, with a few minor exceptions, Lisa basically has 2 things she does: seduce men and talk about not wanting to be with Johnny. Claudette has a similar situation. She sometimes says other things, but her only purpose in any scene is to tell Lisa to be with Johnny. What's interesting is how the limited numbers of ways characters have to act works with the more realistic tendencies of the movie. Let's look at one of the most famous scenes in the movie.
Nobody wants to help me, and I'm dying.
You're not dying, Mom.
I got the results of the test back. I definitely have breast cancer.
Look, don't worry about it. Everything will be fine.
So, in this scene, Claudette does a really realistic thing. She alludes to her story as a character, makes you aware that she is a world outside of Lisa's relationship to Johnny, but once this line is said, Wiseau seems to reflexively pull back, forces characters into their status quo. It's going to be fine, Mom. In essence, she's saying, your character and your situation is not the real reason we're talking. Every single Lisa-Claudette scene has this pattern. Claudette says a few words about how awful her life is going, but these complaints are never received as significant. She says them, Lisa barely registers what she's saying, and the characters go back to the only thing they can talk about, Johnny. The naturalism of the mother's circumstances are always immediately countered by the fact that, above anything else, Tommy Wiseau prizes the strict boundaries he places around his characters over their authenticity. Let's look at the way Mark's scenes repeat now. A scene in which Lisa seduces him is repeated a lot in this movie, and each scene is almost identical to the last. Mark comes in hesitant, Lisa comes at him, he denies her for a moment, always saying, "What are you doing?" before finally caving in and having sex with her.
What are you doing this for? What's going on here? What are you doing? I mean, are you crazy? Everybody's here.
These repetitions of scenes are not only an example of Wiseau using shortcuts for writing his characters, but also prevent Mark from coming across as a multidimensional character who progresses with the plot. His constantly repeated, "What are you doing?" which the actor Greg Sestero always chooses to read as completely oblivious, conveys the idea that Mark really doesn't know what's happening, that he's sincerely in the dark to what Lisa wants from him. This repetition is especially uncanny because it makes no sense. People in real life may repeat things over and over again, but they're able to learn and think for themselves. If the last time I talked to Lisa she wanted to have sex with me, she'll probably want that again. But there is no learning in Mark's character, and that creates a really distorting, unnatural effect. One Mark-Lisa scene in particular gets at the extent to which Mark is a completely static character.
Why did you do this to me? Why? Johnny's my best friend.
Didn't you enjoy it?
That's not the point.
I personally love this scene because with one line, "Why are you doing this to me?" Wiseau expresses a tendency that's simultaneously natural and surreal. Mark's suggestion that he feels absolutely powerless is as natural as it gets. He's sort of looking at himself as a physical body whose attraction to Lisa is far beyond his control. What makes this scene so unnatural, so completely weird, is that we've been here before. Mark has already expressed that he doesn't want to be with Lisa, but that he'll be with her anyway, and he'll express that thought again the next time Lisa tries to be with him. This insistence on verbatim repetition doesn't reinforce a sense of realism, it distracts from it. One of the most boring sets of repeated scenes are the sex scenes Lisa has with Mark and Johnny. There are 4 of these scenes in the movie, and they're all incredibly similar. I mean, the second Johnny sex scene repeats footage from the first one, and really gives the audience the uncanny feeling that the movie is reusing itself, incapable of progressing in a logical, linear way. But what interests me more about the sex scenes isn't related so much to repetition as it is to tonal weirdness. Let's look at the second sex scene, where Mark and Lisa have sex. This scene is strange not just because we saw an almost identical Johnny-Lisa sex scene around 10 minutes ago, but also because this choreographed montage sex scene comes at a point that should feel organic. Mark and Lisa are having sex for the first time. There's a lot at stake. It's Johnny's best friend, Lisa's future husband, so why does the sex scene have the same exact cadences as the first one? This tonal dissonance contributes to the sense that the movie doesn't have a consistent internal logic, that any sense of naturalism or scene development in this movie is less important than the weird scene Wiseau wants to show us. Mark actually has a few of these tonally dissonant scenes, but let's look at one we've already talked about a little bit.
It's none of your business, man. I think you know everything. You don't know shit. Wait a second. Who do you think you are? You're acting like a kid. Just grow up. Who do you call a kid? Fuck you. Look, just chill out, Mark. I'm just trying to help. You're having an affair with Lisa, aren't you? Am I wrong?
What?
What are you, nuts? God!
This is honestly one of the strangest scenes I've ever watched in a movie, and what makes it so strange isn't just that Mark randomly starts to murder Peter, but also how the camera completely commits to this tonal shift. Rather than staying in a safe master like most of the rest of the movie does, Wiseau cuts to this really intense low-angle shot that emphasizes just how real the danger of this moment is. What's more, after this vaguely terrifying shot, the director returns to the calm scene he was showing before, where Peter immediately forgives Mark and the scene just kind of moves on. These tonal dissonances can be found everywhere in The Room. Like, look here when Mark tells Johnny a story about women being abused and he just weirdly laughs.
I used to know a girl. She had a dozen guys.
One of them found out about it, beat her up so bad she ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street.
What a story, Mark.
Look over here, where Johnny goes from yelling that he didn't beat Lisa up to happily greeting Mark.
It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, and over here, where there are two separate instances where all the men are joyfully tossing around a football and Mark, out of the blue, knocks one of them down.
Okay, you alright?
Mark, go. Go.
These constant, abrupt shifts in mood, these weird uses of catchphrases, and these strange, almost eerie emphases on repetition all make the movie seem like the opposite of natural. And this tension between natural and surreal is really at the heart of the movie. So, now that I've talked about how the movie leans toward both naturalism and toward complete surrealism, it's time to try to connect these tendencies to the movie's plot and characters in a more direct way. And in doing this, the most important character to look at is Lisa, because in a lot of ways I think her arc embodies the bipolar nature of the room. Lisa may not be the protagonist of the film, but she's certainly the character who undergoes the most change. She's the center of the conflict in the movie, and she's one of the strangest characters. So the following is going to sound kind of broad and over the top, but just follow me here. The world Lisa lives in is one of oppressive masculinity and materialism. Lisa's future husband, Johnny, only shows her affection by giving her various over-the-top gifts and having weird, sort of playful sexual interactions with her. Rather than emphasizing his qualities as a person, Johnny is consistently talked about in terms of his wealth, his prospects of getting a promotion, the security he provides her, his taking care of Denny, etc. When Lisa talks about her unhappiness with Johnny to her mother, her response always comes down to, he provides for you, he's due for a promotion.
He supports you, he provides for you, and darling, you can't support yourself.
Likewise, Lisa is consistently understood only in terms of her attractiveness. In fact, almost every man she interacts with in the movie at some point describes her in terms of how beautiful she is, oftentimes when she's not in the room.
I have a girl. She's married. I mean, she's very attractive. It's driving me crazy.
Oh, yeah. Lisa looks hot tonight.
Look at this scene where Denny confesses to having a crush on Lisa.
It's about Lisa.
Go on.
She's beautiful. She looks great in her red dress. I think I'm in love with her.
In this scene, Denny not only understands Lisa in terms of her beauty, but he also specifically references the way she looks in her red dress, the object that Johnny bought her at the very beginning of the movie. What's so great about this scene is how it gets at the way Lisa is always understood. Even this seemingly innocent statement from the film's most naive character is said in terms of the objects that define Lisa, the material traces that Johnny leaves on her. What's more, after this confession of love or attraction, Denny immediately tempers his plans in a really creepy way.
What about Elizabeth, huh?
Well... I love her.
Mm-hmm.
When I graduate from college, get a good job, I want to marry her and have kids with her.
His immediate shift of language from his declaration of airheaded love for Lisa to a description of the absolutely average future he sees for him and his own future wife demonstrates how even the most idealistic characters see the world in terms of this oppressive normalcy and materialism. When Denny wants Lisa, he thinks of her in terms of the objects she wears. When he thinks about his other romantic prospect, he understands her in terms of the status quo world he'll build with her, marriage and babies. Nothing in Denny's world is valued for itself. It's always what that object will represent in the material world. So, above all, Lisa's world is defined by its pragmatism and by its materialism. This is the world Lisa constantly tries to work against, though she does so in really strange, often difficult to notice ways. Let's look at this scene.
Hurry up, I have to open the door.
Wait, hang on.
Come on in, it's open.
I barely noticed this scene the first time I watched the movie, but it's really strange, isn't it? Mark specifically asks her to wait a second to open the door while he's getting dressed, and Lisa, without thinking about it, opens the door, disrespecting Mark's wishes. The best way to explain her action here is to think of it as an act of rebellion against the role she takes in the lives of other characters. Lisa does not want to have a quiet, illicit affair with Mark. Rather, she is invested in the narrative of her affair. She wants Michelle to see Mark's naked body because she wants her to know that she is living improperly, that she is going against her loyalty to Johnny and the confining roles that others place her in. Another peculiar scene where Lisa rebels against society's expectations is toward the end of the movie.
Hey everybody, I have an announcement to make. We're expecting.
When is the baby due?
There is no baby.
What?
This scene demonstrates again how you can define Lisa by her desire to act against the system, whatever that means. By lying about her pregnancy, Lisa is clearly trying to stir up trouble between Mark and Johnny, as both men could reasonably think they are the father. Lisa's lie then can be seen as an attempt to assert agency, to construct her own false narrative in order to create excitement in her mundane life. Explaining why she lies about her pregnancy, Lisa says,
I told him that to make it interesting.
and I think this line completely encapsulates Lisa's role in the movie, to create tension, conflict, disruption, to make things interesting. Lisa's transgressive tendencies come to their head in a scene where she talks to Michelle.
Everything's changed. I need more from life than what Johnny can give me. Suddenly my eyes are wide open and I can see everything so clearly. I want it all.
You think you can get it all from Mark?
If he can't give me what I want, somebody else will.
This scene basically nails Lisa's anarchic tendencies to the wall, as she makes it clear that more than not wanting to be with Johnny and more than wanting to be with Mark, Lisa wants to be free to pursue pleasure without obligation, to be in charge of her own life in a way entirely divorced from obligation and economic security. I love thinking about these scenes with Lisa because her conflict with other characters and with the society she lives in reflects the film's overarching conflict between realism and surrealism. The characters around Lisa are obsessed with realism, a realism that verges into an ideological allegiance to normalcy. Almost everything they do and say is rooted in the expected roles they're supposed to assume. From Johnny, who only wants to act as the provider for Lisa and Denny, to Claudette, who is obsessed with her finances and the security of her daughter, to Mark, who blatantly doesn't love Lisa but continues to see her as some extension of masculinity, to Denny, who considers a life with Lisa but quickly accepts a status quo life. The characters seem absolutely glued to the concrete laws of the world around them. They have an aversion to seeing the world as a place to make choices based on non-material desires. One of the best illustrations of characters adopting this pragmatic ideology comes from Stephen and Michelle in one of the final scenes.
This is going to pull us all down. It's going to shake up our group of friends. It's going to destroy our friendship, Lisa.
That scene's most repeated line is, "You're going to ruin all of our friendships." This line demonstrates how, even in scenes where it seems like characters should care about the morality of an act, they are more concerned with its impact on a more pragmatic level. They don't care about the action being wrong, they don't care about Lisa's state of mind as she did the bad thing, they only care about its impact on the real world, their friendships, their set of relationships. So, if we see the other characters in the room as embodiments of the film's realistic tendencies, Lisa clearly acts as the surreal bent. Her lies about cheating on Johnny, about being pregnant, her erratic behavior from opening the door before Mark's gotten dressed, to this scene.
You know, I love you very much.
Where she talks to Mark on the phone when Johnny is right in the other room, all indicates her obsession with creating narratives, with breaking away from the status quo, with confounding her world of material relationships. If there's a question that this video is meant to answer, it's this. What can we learn from The Room? As best as I can muster, the answer is that The Room is a crash course in how to make a movie, and all the decisions in that movie go completely unnoticed. This film does everything wrong. The acting is atrocious, the writing is lazy, there are 4 lengthy sex scenes, the main character is always dubbed and looks like an alien, and because of all that, the audience never stops to ask, why are scenes constantly repeated? Why does Lisa lie about being pregnant? Why is there such an emphasis on drugs? Questions that, if there was a better writer, a better director, better actors, we would be forced to ask. I think that once we move past thinking that the only thing this movie has to offer is funny lines and bad acting, we can see a film that's fundamentally in conflict with itself on every level. A movie that is incredibly dense with meaning because of, and not in spite of, the fact that Tommy Wiseau clearly has no idea what he's doing.